Hello, and welcome to the Talkbox explanation for the piece Beats from the Dead. First thing I want to talk about, even though this is written for Talkbox solo, I would prefer to have two people actually playing the Talkbox. Someone's piano skills might be extremely strong, but being able to actually get the right sounds out of the Talkbox is quite difficult while playing. At least for some of the stuff that I've written. It's not just single one-line things. Sometimes it's doubling in two hands and making sure that you're really getting those articulations with the Talkbox can be quite difficult while doing both. So I would prefer actually to have two people playing the Talkbox line. So one person actually playing the piano and the other person having the tube in their mouth, articulating the words and sounds. Next thing I wanted to talk about is the actual Talkbox itself and how it is set up and how it makes the sounds for this piece. So the Talkbox right here, I have a Banshee Talkbox. There's many different ones that you can buy. It's by Rocktron is the one I have. There are some other really great brands out there. And also you can find ways to make them on the cheap. I would prefer not to do that because the quality is just very, very different and not exactly what I want from the piece. So when we have the Talkbox here, what you're going to want to do here, this is the power output. Make sure that's plugged into a source of power, and then having this out jack connected to a piano. This is my Casio piano, and having that plugged in as well is going to be able to correlate the sounds that are coming from the piano into the Talkbox in terms of pitch. So with the Talkbox, we have a black tube here, so one end of the tube will go into this side of the Talkbox, while the other end of the tube that looks like this will go into your mouth. So what happens with it is when we turn it on, it flows the sound through the tube and into this end. So when you cover it up like that, it'll be muted. So this is something too that you will need a microphone for to be able to sound over the wind ensemble. So that is how it comes out. So you'll hear the way that something comes out, like just a bass plus lead. Sounds like that and comes out. So that is how the Talkbox works in terms of its tone production. Next we'll be looking at the settings for the Talkbox and also the plugins on the piano. So what I have for this piece is I have the gains quite up, so you can see what kind of happens when through the tube here when I turn the gains down, and the tone should be slightly up too. Basically everything is quite up. None of this is really super specific. It's just so that the sound really does come out quite clear, because any super low, it's just not quite as that kind of stinging sound that I'm going for. So having the gains up, you will be able to hear this quite a bit, but having the player close their mouth over it, or to be able to stop it like that, or in sections where they're not playing, we'll have the ability to turn it off, and then before they come back in, turn it on again. So that will be the kind of setup for the Talkbox in terms of the actual machine part of it. So the first plugin that I have notated is bass plus lead. And the sound I'm looking for that sounds like this without it in my mouth. So that's the kind of sound that you're looking for. And then something in the upper register, you can hear it as. It has a very clear percussive start to it. That way when you're hearing the sounds, the words being made, you will not be questioning what they are. So then here's what it will sound like in the mouth of the player. So something from like the very beginning, Song of Myself. Song of myself. So that's what we're going for in terms of the bass plus lead plugin. Next we're going to be talking about the cello patch. So this is what it sounds like with just nothing in the mouth. And then in the mouth. Now I will do nothing but listen. So that's the kind of sound that we're going for the cello patch. Next we're going to be talking about the drawbar organ plugin. So this is what it sounds like without it in the player's mouth. So here's what it sounds like in the upper octave. So and then with it in the mouth, it should be like this. So a section that you would encounter is the drop, as I call it, and where it begins with the yoys. That's the kind of sound we're looking for. So that is what it kind of sounds like in the bottom portion, and then there will be portions, of course, at the top where you're going to double that. So that's the kind of sound you should be going for when looking for the plug-in for a drawbar organ. The other plug-in we're going to be talking about is the percussion organ. Now, the drawbar organ sounds very similar to the percussion organ, but the percussion organ has less of a bite to it. Seem a little sweeter on the ears. And then up top. So I'll play a little something like that. So in the bottom. And then up top. So that is the sound you're looking for from the percussion organ. To make the words and sounds from the Talkbox, I wanted to be clear that none of this actually includes you as the performer with the tube in your mouth singing. There will be no singing, and there is no, except for in practice, physically speaking. So like, my name is Logan. My name is Logan. Like you won't be able to actually speak like that. So what you are doing though is to put this in your mouth. You basically will say, like, if it's the word "my name is Logan," it's very, very exaggerated so that it can come across in the tube. So, my name is Logan, and everything has to be enunciated like this, and that's why having one player is actually preferred just to do the Talkbox, because it takes so much articulation inside your mouth to be able to really get this to speak. And so just having the tube though by itself isn't enough to cut over a wind ensemble, so you must have a microphone, and that will also pick up some of the spitting details that you are doing as the player. Now, getting the Talkbox to speak isn't as easy as just putting the tube in your mouth, because just putting the tube in your mouth, you can, and that's cool and a great sound, but to be able to actually get the words out, the easiest way to do this, what you're going to need to do is when you have your tube, it should be boiled, and I really mean boiled it. So get a hot thing of water, and just put it on the stove, just water, and put your tube inside the water for about 5 to 10 minutes, and make sure that it's soft, because having a hard tube is going to hurt the inside of your mouth, number one, and also where you want it in your mouth is in the very back by your molars to be able to speak the easiest. So having it just at the very not in the very far back, your tongue will get in the way, and it'll create difficulties with the audience actually understanding your words. So like, that sounds great, but if you're trying to put things to that, like, it doesn't have that clear cuttingness, and half the air, having it closer or in the middle, it's escaping out both sides. This is escaping, and we don't want that. So what you'll actually do, you'll put it all the way in the back by your molars, so that it creates the inside of the tube should be like that into your mouth. So it should be all the way back like this, and since you boiled the tube, it'll be soft enough to bite, or at least stay in place like such. So now I will nothing but listen. And that's the kind of sound that we're wanting to cut through here, and so that'll work for all of these, except for some of the sounds where the yoi sections and the ya, those aren't quite as important. Where it needs to be super in the far back, it can be a little looser. Just so that is something that it doesn't have to be as far back in there. But for getting the words to actually speak, you're going to need to get it all the way in the back by the molars and really articulate them. In terms of notation, there's something that I've notated that's a dotted slur. And what that means is that you won't re-articulate the note that is slurred with them. So in something that you'll see is for every atom. So for every atom, on the repeated notes you won't re-articulate that. And also in the yoi section for the chorus, so you'll hear so they're all like quarter notes, or half notes. And then but you will not, you wouldn't do something like this, yo yo yo. So you won't actually do it like that, but you'll only do it, if it's repeated like that and has that dotted slur over it, you will not have to re-articulate it on the piano.
Another thing to think about is dynamics. So with the talkbox, to be able to pick up the sounds coming out of the talkbox, you still have to be generally pretty close to the microphone. There can be a little bit of back and forth between the microphone for sections where there's not that much dynamic change, but for the most part between bigger dynamic sections, something from piano to forte can't simply be just moving back and forth from the microphone to get the dynamics. So the output on the talkbox will always remain the same, but there's two options to be able to get the correct dynamics. I believe the first option is easier in my thought process. So the actual keyboard has a volume button, a volume either knob or slide of some kind to control the volume. So that is one way to do it, and I think that's probably the easiest. If you're having one person play the talkbox, being able to move that might be a little bit more difficult. But if you have two people and someone is just having the tube in their mouth and doing that, they will have at least a hand free to be able to move the volume up and down. So I think that's the easiest option. That's option number one. And option number two is to have, if you're putting the talkbox sounds through either like an amp or speakers for the hall, to be able to do that, to have a manual volume control near the talkbox so that the player or players will be able to manipulate it as written.
Thank you so much for watching the Talkbox explanation portion of my piece, Beats from the Dead. The Talkbox has been seen in pop culture across eras, from everything from Peter Frampton to Bruno Mars. So I'm going to play for you. I do not own any of these, by the way. It's just so you can get a kind of grasp on the cultural influence that the Talkbox has. So here is a little bit of Peter Frampton using the Talkbox. Here's a little bit of Zapp and Roger using the Talkbox. And here is a little bit of Bruno Mars in 24 Karat Magic using the Talkbox. Tonight.